Going? All right, welcome everybody to the Tuesday budget meeting, Administrative Services. We are going to get started with an overview from Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Okay, really quickly, a lot of you guys know how this goes because you've done it for at least a couple of years now. So for those of you who don't, we do an overview at the beginning of each day before budget reviews. So, oh, is my mic quiet? That's odd for me. I'm typically not a quiet person.
Everything was
so.
quiet yesterday.
Thank you. Okay, really quickly, we're going to give you a rundown of what's inside the binders. The very front portion where the tabs are larger, they're same size as the paper, is a tentative budget. The first section is your operating budget. This section includes the local share summary, and that demonstrates the activity for all funds and displays the tax levy, excuse me, property valuation and tax rate for 2025 and 2024, in addition to the changes year over year. The next section, you have your capital budget section, which includes the status of all active capital projects and a list of projects proposed for new or additional funding in 2025. Your fiscal status section includes the fund balance and debt schedules. And this front section, this is really kind of just a reminder. This demonstrates the uses of fund balance and reserves. Those uses are not reflected at the department level throughout the budget. They're only displayed in this front portion of the budget. So if you have questions on that, that's broken out in that front half of your budget binder. The budget summaries and line item detail are behind the tentative budget. They're in order by organization number, hence the numbers on the tabs. Your budget summary components consist of your local share summary by department, your full-time equivalent or FTE position summary, everybody's favorite acronym, summary by department at the classification level with comments. These budget hearings typically focus on these particular exhibits. Your summary by organization at the classification level, and this summarizes the individual departments that follow behind. Your budget worksheet is at the line item detail level. Just wanted to remind everybody, when you propose any amendments, those are done at the classification level, not at the specific account level. So the entire classification is typically what you change.
Whatever you say.
In the front sleeve of your binder, you had the financial projections for 2025 through 2029. This is an annual projection of appropriations, revenue, tax levy, tax cap, tax rate, and fund balance. Really quickly, overall highlights, the FTEs and governmental funds increased by 19.39 over 2024. There is a vacancy savings also included in this year's budget, just like we did with 2024. We assumed a 5% vacancy savings. I believe average year to date has been running roughly 10%, so we still did that on the conservative side, but we did plug in the vacancy savings. And another quick reminder that when you're looking at the .8s in any given department, the .8s are a derivative of your .1s. They're directly tied to whatever is budgeted in the .1s. So rather than, worrying too much or focusing too much of your time on any of the .8s in the departments, the .1s and .4s and .2s are really where your focuses would be better served. Recommended format for the budget review hearing, department head typically leads the committee through his or her budget summary. You can refer to the budget by account detail as necessary. And it is also recommended that the committee vote on any desired amendments to send to audit and control either throughout the hearing or at the end of the day. That way, everything is all done and you don't have to worry about trying to remember anything. Further recommended that to the extent possible, the committee propose amendments to offset any increases to appropriations or decreases in revenue. Again, another reminder, the tentative budget is just below the tax cap. And after the tentative budget was prepared, there were a couple of corrections that were identified and new information that became available. Any departments that this applies to, we'll point that out during the course of review meetings, but we just want to let everybody know that there will be a couple of small changes. So, and that's it from me. Any questions?
I feel like we can proceed with confidence. All right. First up, IT technology, please introduce yourselves and proceed.
Good morning. My name is John D'Angelo. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the county.
Sam Zaffoto, Deputy Director of Finance.
So, for those new or that don't know, information services actually encompasses 3 different departments: office services, which is our courier service and our mail processing primarily; communications, which is all of our desk phones; and IT, which is everything IT. So all computers and basically anything that plugs into a wall that's not a light. So I'll start out with overall across all those departments, we're seeing a 3.8% increase in local share, which is a modest increase given some of the staffing cost increases that we'll see next year. So we've really tried to tighten down expenses, obviously. Next page, we'll start with FTEs. So this sheet does show flat FTEs. However, full disclosure, we did, I don't want to say lose, but we transferred 1 employee to the finance department because of the finance consolidation project that went on. So we actually do have an increase of 1 person. My plan here is to hire a security analyst to help us with our cybersecurity. We are spending a lot of money and a lot of time defending our network against the bad guys, and we really, really are struggling to keep up on a day-to-day basis with that endeavor. So, and in addition, my primary infrastructure supervisor does plan on retiring relatively soon, in a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, and this position would roll into that. That's the anticipation. So when he does retire, we wouldn't need to rehire that particular spot. And this would give us a good year to develop that person, which really it's for the complexity of our network really is what it takes, quite a bit of training and development. So that's the logic behind the security analyst. So we actually do have overall an increase of 1 FTE.
So that's a full-time job, just.
Yes. Oh gosh, yes, absolutely.
I thank you for your candor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, John,
yes.
to be clear, does that mean that your budget projection is now changing? You're increasing beyond 15, or you're replacing the one that transferred?
Replacing the one that transferred.
Thank you for the clarity.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Also,
Sure.
Hiring, is there the people to fill those positions? Have you had any issue with people, finding the qualified applicants and also being competitive and?
It's gotten a little better. We've hired last year. We found an excellent candidate for like a introductory position. There are valid civil service lists right now for our positions. They're not long. There's not a lot to choose from, but there are valid lists. I can tell you that. This particular title, I'll go through the civil service process to get it titled correctly. There probably won't be a list for that, so we'll probably be hiring quote unquote off the street and then have to do the civil service exam and such. So it's probably a tough title to fill locally. These people can probably get a good dollar in bigger cities. But so far, if we can find a good local person that wants to stay local to our county, and build a family here and a life, then we'll certainly take advantage of that. So.
John, you mentioned cybersecurity.
Yes.
These attacks, are they foreign or domestic?
Mix of both.
Really?
We do see quite a bit of traffic coming from China, North Korea, Iran, Russia. We really do.
No
And
kidding.
then some domestic, but not, frankly, not as much domestic. We do block, we do what's called geo-blocking. So we block a lot of IP addresses from foreign countries. and that helps quite a bit. But yeah, we do see a tax, domestic and
Just
internationally.
wondered.
Yeah. Okay, onward. So I think we'll start with our office services department, which is 1610. We have a staff of 3 there. That'll be maintained. Again, this is our courier service, where the individual basically drives around all county offices and delivers inter-office mail daily, and our postage. Those are the 2 big numbers. We also buy all the paper for the county and then deploy it to the departments as needed. So those are the big expense lines, primarily postage and paper. We do anticipate an increase in paper costs next year, so we see a bump in that particular line item. Postage, there is going to be an increase, but we are seeing a little bit of a decrease in usage of postage, so I felt that that offset the increase in cost at this time. So overall, sorry. Oh, we'll have to fix that. Overall, an increase, but primarily because of the anticipated increase in paper costs.
And Jen, you've hired a new part-time person for services as far as the mailroom, a former county employee?
Correct. We have 2 substitute employees. Both are former county employees, so that if our mailroom attendant is sick and our regular substitute, she generally goes to Florida in the winter, so we do need a substitute in there. Those are services that we can't really just not do every day, so we do need substitutes available for that.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on office services? If not, we'll move on to communications. So again, this is our desk phones. We have over 1,500 desk phones. We're in the middle of a significant upgrade to that system right now on the tail end of it. And so given the upgrade that we're doing this year, and I did mention this during legislative meetings last month, we do see a small decrease in our expenses for next year because we did the upgrade this year on the phone system. So the way this works is essentially everything we have to purchase for the phone system, we charge back on a per line basis to the departments. However, we have external customers as well. That gives us a little extra revenue. So our biggest one being the courts in this building and up on 2 Academy Street. And also we charge the IDA and the CRIC, which I'm not sure what that stands for, but it's also up at 2 Academy Street. So we supply phones for them as well. So that gives us a little extra revenue, which is nice. But overall, no major changes here. Again, just a little bit of a drop in expenses. I do have one, I think it's 30% of one employee dedicated to our phone system. So she's our, we took it back in-house. We used to have a vendor take care of our phone system, but since we upgraded, the last upgrade, which was about 6 years ago, we took that in-house, so now we can staff it and take care of it ourselves, which has cut down expenses significantly over those years. Any questions on communications? Yeah.
Are all these updates and upgrades to the phone system, does our current infrastructure, is it compatible with that, or do they have to update some of the wiring and switches and controls and that sort of thing?
The most recent update updated the servers primarily, and there's 3 servers, one in Jamestown, one in Mayville, one in Dunkirk. They kind of all back each other up. The connectivity between those servers did not have to be upgraded. We have fiber optic connections between all of those, so we're good there for quite a while. Some of the handsets in our older locations, we've upgraded most of them, but there's probably just a handful of old handsets that we'll have to upgrade, but we have some of those in stock that we'll just swap those out with. So there shouldn't be any retrofitting to the new version. Everything's compatible. So
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to our larger department, which is the IT department. And again, we support over 1,200 computers across all the locations, across over 20 locations. We also support many of the public service and public safety. We do support the jail, the sheriff, but also provide services to many of the jurisdictions, local police departments. We provide their software and assist them as needed. So JPD, Westfield PD, all those places kind of we interact with. So it's quite expansive. Personal services, kind of pretty flat, given that we, again, transferred one employee out and are hiring one new employee. But even with the CBA increases, we're doing a fairly good job of increase of only 80,000, 79,255. We do see an increase in our .4s, primarily due to software, and I can go into detail on that as you, if you request, but primarily our software costs are going up. And then increase in employee benefits, which usually, copies the increase in the .1s. So in addition, down on our revenue side, we are seeing an increase in our support for DSS and health. They have some computer applications that they've been upgrading, either by choice or by state mandate, that involves a lot of IT work. Talk about retrofitting. The state really doesn't think about those things, so it kind of lands on the counties to put in a lot of effort to assist primarily those two departments with their software upgrades. So we charge that back in an annual agreement that we have with DSS, and then they get some of that reimbursed. I'll let Kitty and Sam talk about any reimbursement questions. I'm not too familiar with the DSS reimbursement side of things, but that's why that increase in revenue is there. You probably saw an increase, as I watched yesterday, in the DSS line item of that expense. That would have been in there $59.50, I think. So that kind of models, this is where that increase came from. So,
Question.
yes.
May I just back do the math on your salary costs, which I take are personal services?
Yes.
So this year, we're up, if I have it right, 13.5%, and we're budgeting to be up 8.2%. I mean, inflation's running 2.5, 2.75. So long pull, we keep this up, so in real dollars, we're gonna get big. Why are we running so much more than inflation on comp, if the headcount's constant?
Well, two things. I do have a one upgrade. Right now, my help desk attendant is a trainee, and she will automatically be moved to a full-time PC specialist next year. So basically a promotion that's part of, building our staff. But everybody else is just step increases. I'm really not sure. I mean, we're not increasing more than that. Go ahead, Kitty.
Our
13,
labor,
14 this
I'm
year.
sorry,
So-
Yeah.
I can try and help answer the question. And our collective bargaining agreements with our unions reflect the wage increase that's a contractual increase. So right now, that probably is higher. I mean, so that's what we're bound to in terms of wage increases.
So that's a good point. So then the question becomes, why are we agreeing to union contracts significantly above inflation?
There's a variety of factors that go into the negotiation of contracts, so
Sounds
obviously.
alarming.
Yeah, so, I mean, the CSEA, the current agreement with our biggest bargaining unit was settled last year, and it's a 4-year agreement.
And
There are a
what-
lot of variables that, like, other, cost savings or work rules that, are negotiated in the big picture of the agreement. And last year too, when we were negotiating the contract, inflation was much higher than what we negotiated wage increases to be for that year.
And that's kind of a separate issue,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of across the board, you
Yeah,
know, with all
but
departments.
I think the big thing, John, is not just the CSE 8 negotiated raises, but the step increases,
Mhm.
which you mentioned.
Sure.
That's a big factor.
Absolutely. And, yeah, and I have a few employees at their top step, and we created a couple extra top steps, so there's more room to move up, based on the CBA, so
And,
it's,
to the extent that she's a trainee, she's got a year's experience.
Yeah.
Fine, that's good personnel management. But in the overall scheme of things,
Mhm.
running up against the tax cap, we can't be running comp out ahead of inflation. Or year after year, gonna get behind the eight ball.
yeah, I would agree with you. I think part of
I mean,
this.
Not just your department.
Right, and part of this is the negotiation coming right out of COVID, where inflation was, you know, running 8%, and negotiations were happening during that time. Thankfully, we did anticipate that it would lower, that inflation would lower, but, yeah, I would say it's gonna be across the board. You're gonna see that today, so.
And
Yeah.
John, I would add that if we look at the national employment marketplace, IT professionals are in extremely high demand everywhere.
Mhm.
And so it is a competitive recruitment opportunity for the county and retention need for the county. So
It is, and.
this is one department where I think we need to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and we're not only, you know, we talked about getting somebody to fill the systems or the security analyst position locally. We're especially, this department is not only competing with other local businesses, and Buffalo and Erie, Pennsylvania and Cleveland, but a lot of these positions, people can work remotely. So we're literally competing with New York City and with LA and, you know, big time places that are paying a lot more. So we really, when we do recruit, we recruit strongly on this is a great place to live. You know, we love it here, and you want to raise a family and have a low cost of living, and get a good wage and a good place to work. This is a good spot for you. So that's what we really focus on.
That's why we're all here.
That's right. Kept me here.
You know, you've probably got the most competitive labor market of any department.
It is. It's not easy, but yeah. Okay, so that was IT. The last department I have is the GIS, which is kind of an offshoot of IT. We like to separate it out. Basically, that has stayed pretty steady throughout the years. We do have expenses every year for software maintenance, and then we put dollars in there for consulting. So we kind of take care of the hardware in-house, but the software maintenance and the GIS work that we do have to contract out. It's a kind of a very specialized product. Many departments use it: South Sewer, Health Department, Law Enforcement, City of Jamestown, other jurisdictions all get into our product and utilize that data. So it's pretty important. I get comments. That's the one place I do get when I'm walking around, comments that people either love the GIS or, hey, why was it down today? Our real estate realtors use it extensively. So, yeah,
Yes, they
it's a
do.
good part. Yes, they do. So, but
I've heard less complaints about it, though.
Mhm.
Seems like we're holding our own better than we were a few years.
yeah, we have a really good contractor right now who actually works for the city of Buffalo, but he contracts with us. He used to work for us, and he does a great job helping us out at a low cost. So it's been more stable. I think we just updated the data. The county is being flown again by New York State, probably this spring, I think it is. So we'll get some refreshed data up there probably by the fall of next year. So
And that was a question, I know, you know, in 2023, it was around, 17,000, and last year it was 30. I knew we were doing some upgrades, and that's probably that cost.
Yeah,
And I was assuming we must be doing more of that this year again. to
correct,
keep it at
correct.
that amount.
Yes, yeah, the GIS program is a constant, there's constant changes to it, and it's very, very complicated. The software we use is called ESRI, ArcGIS, and it's very complicated. The licensing is complicated. It's not cheap. Departments pay for their own licensing. We just pay for the server licensing in the IT department. And departments pay for their own consulting. The health department, environmental health has some specialized software that they go around and locate all the valves and septic systems and things like that. So it's used extensively by those departments. And so, yeah, it's a pretty important system countywide. And frankly, I think we do it at a very low cost compared to some other counties.
Well, just as a user, if it's any consolation, I've, over the years, poked around in Texas, California, here, other counties in New York and Pennsylvania, and yours is the best, easiest system by far.
Thank you.
All the ones I've bumped into.
Thanks. That's pretty much it. I did want to alert you to one, I don't want to call it an error, maybe an oversight that we did find. In the 1610, under the .4s, I actually budgeted for, we utilize two vehicles in the IT. One the courier uses every day, and the other one staff uses to deliver computers and fix things across those 20 locations. And we like to swap those out every 5 years or so. So we did I did initially budget for a purchase of a new vehicle, which is the 5981 account. But then I was advised by finance to lease it instead, so we're going to do that. And that is the 4320 account. So in 4320, we have a cost of 9,600, but we never took out the purchase number. So we can reduce, if you want, you can reduce the .4s in 1610 by 8,000 if you so desire, because we don't need that.
New car electric?
Haven't decided yet. The courier puts on about 130 miles a day.
Yeah, base them in Westfield, get the low electricity rate, and he charges every night here.
Yeah, not a
Just about
bad idea.
traveling for free.
Yeah. So, haven't quite decided on that yet. I would like to, if it's feasible. Yeah. In the winter, he does like all-wheel drive. I
Yeah.
like to, you know,
Absolutely.
and it's a small SUV, so, but we'll look at that for sure. Any other questions?
Do we need to amend that?
Do you want to do that? It's up to you.
You could do your, motion now, or, we keep notes, so we can do it at the end of it, it's your preference.
What's
Do it now.
better?
Do it now.
Do it now?
Make a motion to
Yeah.
amend it. I think my mic's down.
So,
The motion would be to reduce,
the purchase,
account 1610.4 by $8,000, that would be the motion.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. We didn't, okay.
Okay. Make that motion.
Make that motion. We got a motion.
All right, I'll second it. No? Oh, from them.
Oh.
Audit control can do
Second.
that?
second that, yep.
No, how come?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Amended. Do you want numbers?
We got 'em.
She's got it.
From 10.4.
That was a joke.
Last thing I'll say is, I know that IT is engaged in all the other departments, so if any other questions come up, these guys all know how to get a hold of me. If you need something answered, I'm happy to, I'm right downstairs or jump up here or whatever you need, so.
I would just like to say, John, it's been years and years that I've been
Yeah.
here, and you've always done a great job, and I appreciate how you pay attention to your budget and offering all the services to the county.
Thank you.
So, good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And have them up.
And nothing.
All right.
What's next? Finance. We got
Next
questions
up.
for you guys.
Finance.
Kitty Crow, Director of Finance.
Sam Zaffoto, Deputy Director of Finance.
And we will start on tab 21. Okay, so, this section here of the budget is, reflects the finance department staff, real property, tax department, and our insurance, divisions. And, you know, under all of that also includes our purchasing division and, purchasing budget, payroll, what am I missing, anything? Our, you know, general accounting, group,
The
accounts
DFMs.
payable, receivables, pretty much
Treasury,
all that.
purchasing,
And then now our new, division of, department fiscal management, which was the, division now that all of the fiscal staff have moved under in the finance department. Which kind of, normally you won't see such a big increase in finance, but, the majority of that is related to moving, transferring a lot of positions from other departments into the Department of Finance for this year's budget. So overall, our local share increased $670,000. But again, the majority of that relates to the fiscal staff. So moving on to the next page with the FTEs, I did add a reconciliation down at the bottom to show the transfers from other departments into the Department of Finance. We do have a net increase, though, for a couple of situations. So in 1310, that increase is 3.4 positions, and that's really what the reconciliation is down below. We did have, I know OFA did mention yesterday, they had a reduction of 2 FTE in their department, which are transferring into or transferred into finance. Additionally, they had one position that, they transferred into finance, but OFA utilized that position. But I think overall net, they did reduce their budget. And we had one new senior account clerk, which we are requesting, and that's mainly because for all of the smaller departments that did not have full-time fiscal staff, so you know, like HR, even the ledge office, the county executive's office, probation, you know, various departments that they might have had an admin person, you know, assisting with budget and finance and accounts payable. There was no full-time position to transfer over into finance. However, we have absorbed all of that work. And so that's why I'm requesting the one additional FTE in 1310. Under real property tax, as many of you do know, in the 2024 budget, we reduced the property tax division by 1 because we did not anticipate, because the foreclosure process was in limbo due to the Supreme Court ruling on foreclosure. And at the time, there was a moratorium on foreclosure, which has since changed. And therefore, we have proposing to add back that position to next year's budget. Just as an aside with regard to that, the real property tax director, along with the law department, will be coming to admin services either November to December to start to discuss some different options for how we will handle that, or how the legislature would like to handle that going forward. There's a couple of different options that we could pursue. But they're putting together some different options for consideration and discussion. So more to come on that, but we do now need that additional position. Under the insurance division, so that's Dennis Brook and one staff person, and they handle all of our workers' compensation and general liability insurances. There's no change in those two FTEs.
Kitty, can I
Yes.
just ask, what is a .10 of an employee?
So we have some positions that are allocated to more than one department, so, like if I work, for example, some of my time is charged to the insurance division because I assist them with some of the
Okay.
responsibilities, so 10% of my time is charged to insurance, so that's why you'll see a fraction in some
That's what I
cases.
assumed, I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, yep, no, good question.
It's a real little person.
Since we're left with 32.4 employees, so well, you don't have a .4 employee unless you're a
Yeah.
part-time guy.
Kitty, John had just previously told us that he had transferred one of his positions to finance. That isn't showing up in your reconciliation. Was that to fill an open position?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, his department wasn't one where we had a transfer coming in, but then later his person did fill one of the finance open positions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Kitty, these folks that are being transferred from the Office for the Aging, what will they be doing? Will they be doing accounting, clerical work, grants? What will they be doing exactly?
So they'll still be doing the fiscal work.
Okay,
It's just now under the supervision of the Department of Finance.
instead of Office for the Aging.
Correct, yeah, they're not doing, they're processing, AP invoices, they're preparing claims for reimbursement. They work closely with the department still
Okay.
to support the department, but all of the fiscal tasks are now under the Department of Finance.
Okay. And you think it's a better fit in finance than Office for the Aging?
Yes.
Okay,
I mean, this is across the board, all county departments. The fiscal work is now being performed under our new division, Department of Fiscal Management, which Blake, heads up, and now, Sam and Diana and Chad are the three deputy directors who have teams of people who support, their assigned departments.
this is part of the transition.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Gotcha, thank you.
That's completed, yes?
Yes, in February, all the transfers occurred. Now, you might ask, this might beg the question, why weren't there more people listed here? Because in a lot of cases, the positions transferred over, but we still charge them back to the department because we can claim them, under various grants or, state or federal aid. So they don't show up as an FTE change because the FTE is reflected in those departments and we only do that when it's the case that we can claim reimbursement for their work.
A question curtailing onto the OFA. There was one department that had just expressed some concern about the losing the staff in sense, but that transition has gone fair. They were concerned their work was fairly unique but that's gone okay.
I think, yeah, I mean, like with this was a big change for, the organization as a whole, but I think, we've kind of worked through all the kinks, and I think we're at the point where everyone's, knows what their responsibilities, knows what the, who's doing what, and, but yeah, there was, some learning curve to that for all of us, but I think we're at the point where, and even through the budget process, some departments who were very skeptical, even one that might have written a 12-page memo in opposition, is now very satisfied
mention
with the support that they're getting from the finance department. So, you know, all things considered, I think things are going really well. And you know, we've identified, you know, areas for improved efficiencies, or, you know, found some things that we've been able to correct. And even the employees that transferred themselves, who might have been apprehensive in the beginning, I think they're all, you know, we're past all that. So I think we're in a good position.
Even Sam's figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can, I mean,
Just a question. If we wanted to get an overall grip on headcount between finance, Office of the Aging, IT, what are the other departments I need to add to finance to get an overall grip on headcount?
So the total number of people in the finance department that are, I think there's about 64 total that are now under the Department of Finance, whereas we had about 25 prior to the reorganization.
But what other departments do I need to add?
social service would be
Social
one, public health.
But you won't see a change in their FTEs, because we allocate
Back to them.
back, because that department can then claim reimbursement for those costs.
Okay, it sounds like it's more complicated than we can deal with here, but what I'm looking for is an understanding when we wrap it all together with all these shifts. Are we net up, are we flat, are we net down?
We are net zero we're flat, with the exception of the one additional position that I'm now requesting for 2025, because many of our, probably at least 10 departments didn't have a full-time fiscal person, but we've absorbed the work of all of those.
So all those other departments have a little bit of flex they didn't have before.
Yes. So. And it's a senior account clerk position. It's, you know, it's a mid-level, you know, primarily would be working on processing invoices and, you know, related tasks, so.
And one final question. I've asked just about everybody. How about recruitment? And now, you've had a lot of ups and downs, and your department certainly has changed, and we had a lot of retirees and a lot of shifting around. But overall now, things are getting settled, and even now you have a new position. Or do you have any concern in filling the new position, or?
So, it's been a struggle this year. We've had, you know, earlier this year, we had as many as 10 open positions out of a department, you know, of 64, 65. So that's a lot. It took, you know, for a variety of reasons, we have, no civil service lists, you know, lack of interest in taking a provisional appointment, because that's a risk to the employee, or even transferring people from, you know, one position to another position. You know, like if somebody gets promoted to one job, then you still have to refill that position. And it took us a while before we were starting to get new people in from outside, rather than just moving people around internally. So we are, I think right now I have about 4 open positions, maybe it's 5. So I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but, you know, we're still, the civil service lists are getting a little bit longer. But, well, they are, some are and some aren't. So our senior account clerk list, which is a common title, that test was given earlier this year, and the results came out in July?
It was July, I think.
July. That list is already exhausted. So until that test is given again, which might be sometime next year, and then it usually takes about 6 months to get the results from civil service. You know, in some cases, it's been kind of a nightmare trying to get people in here, but, of the people that we have gotten in, you know, I'm very happy with the staffing that we've been able to, you know, some people that we've recruited in. So I feel like we have a kind of a solid team. A lot of new people, which is good, but it also you know, I see their potential, and so that's kind of exciting as we go forward. So any other questions on the positions? Okay, so the first page there, 1310, pretty much what we've already talked to, describes the main changes there, associated with FTEs. Down below, some of the revenues that, are recorded in this account are, we do get, an allocation of the occupancy tax that helps offset the costs in our Department of Collection and Enforcement. The C-Task, that's the Chautauqua Tobacco Securitization, something, C. They, you know, part of that, agreement is that they do provide, $5,000 toward, assistance with posting notices and, minutes and things like that to our internet. And then we do receive credit card rebates, so we try to, optimize the number of, you know, credit card, purchases for, you know, mainly for commodity-related things, so we do get a credit card rebate on those purchases.
Does that include the airline miles, or is it?
Kitty, on that page, under Personnel Services, you have in your comments that 2024 personnel and benefit costs are expected to be within budget, yet your projection is that they're gonna be, your personal services are gonna be $120,000 over budget.
Yeah, I might have, the timing in which I did the projection and didn't update the notes might have been a little off, but,
So
I
which
think
is-
too,
which
like,
is-
we've
which is
still had,
correct?
I think still, well, I think what I'm saying, so yeah, so after the amendment, so we haven't done any amendments to this year's budget, for example, for the positions that transferred from OFA, so we would be reduced, to do the 2024 amendments to the budget, we would be reducing OFA's budget and increasing finance's budget, so after that, we will be within budget. So, this is our projection, the projection is accurate, and what the comment means is, we still have amendments to do, and once we do those amendments, we will be,
That will bring it within budget?
yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that
Sorry.
explanation.
Trying to redo these. So, any questions on 1310?
Of course.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the details now. I'm looking at page 2 of 8. Under contractual, you have account 4020 and 4040, alternate modes of travel management and lodging management, both of which are doubling or more than doubling. Why is that?
So that would just be, so there's several conferences during the year. One would be our New World Conference, which is our ERP system, so that's our HR payroll system, and a few NISAC conferences. And with having newer people, training is a priority for me, so there's more individuals now that there's more people under finance that I would like to attend various conferences during the year.
Okay. And that also is reflected on the next page in account 4730, subscriptions and memberships, where that's going up $2,700. Is that the same situation? Or is that different?
I think that was just increasing that based on the current year trend, but I will, I'll have to look back at that, because, yeah, training wouldn't go under a subscription, so I don't know if there was something else. Oh, I know what, we did, subscribe to, a new, I'm not sure what you'd call it, but, it allows us, it's a avenue for us to get, expert advice on like payroll matters, so, like 1099s, like which contractors require 1099s, and so, it is considered a subscription. So, you know, there's sometimes strange things that happen, or come up with regard to payroll. And, you know, we don't, you know, like our law department, or maybe even we don't have anybody like on retainer to give us advice like that. So this is a subscription that gives us access to more specific information when those scenarios arise.
Okay.
Would
Thank you.
that kind of go along with that expert would possibly be looking at like the mistake and the fraudulent stuff that we had take place?
No,
completely
it's
different?
more like the accounting treatment, or what the IRS rules are around certain payroll issues, that sort of thing. So it's more, it has to do more with like payroll taxes and, you know, when somebody's considered a contractor versus an employee, and, you know, how you issue a 1099, because sometimes there's some gray areas, there.
Do we don't have a CPA, accounting CPA?
No.
Don't we do
I mean,
that
we have our, you know, our auditors, but,
Right.
I mean, we don't, you know, and that, speaking of which, yeah, so as we have consolidated under finance, it is kind of a goal of mine to build some more depth in the true accounting. We don't have one title in our department that is accountant. So ideally, we'd like to bring in some more, you know, as we contemplate some future retirements, consider kind of beefing up in that accounting expertise. It would be ideal if we, you know, somebody who's handling, you know, the general ledger, you know, would have a CPA.
I mean, when I have a
But-
question, I just
Call
call my
your,
accountant and talk to somebody in the office and get charged.
yeah, so we
$80
don't,
for
don't
the-
have somebody on retainer for something like that, but it mainly comes up with, related to payroll. You know, Todd knows, you know, from our financial statement perspective, you know, if Todd has a question, he calls our auditors, or he'll call the comptroller's office and ask them how they want us to record something. But when it comes to payroll, we don't have that in-house expertise on some issues. And they don't come up every day. I mean, they're random things that come up that you wouldn't anticipate.
No, but
So.
when you need the answer, you
Yeah,
need the
uh-huh.
answer. And hopefully the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
So very innocent question, or question from an innocent. I'm looking at the employee benefits as a percent of personal services. So it looks like overall it runs about 50%, so it's quite different sub-department by sub-department. But
And-
it's, what's in employee benefits?
So, under employee benefits, that, the main thing that would probably be driving a change in percentage department to department would be health insurance, because that's based on, individual employee elections. So, you know, if one department has, majority of their employees have a family of 3, that's more costly than departments that have more people that are single coverage. Other than that, it's just FICA, Medicare, retirement, you know, unemployment, those kind of standard expenses.
In the private sector, I'm used to looking at numbers like 25 or 30%, not 50. So
Mhm.
just at some point, I'm not here, I'd like to understand really what's.
Yeah, so, I mean, the New York State, retirement, you know, rates are, provided to us by the comptroller's office, so, and that's a major cost driver in the .8s. But again, the health insurance costs, so it just, you know, we have 3 tiers, single, family of 2, and family of 3 insurance, but that, aside from that, the other thing that gets recorded in our .8 expenses, our post-employment benefit. So, when employees retire, based on their bargaining unit, have earned health insurance benefit for however many years they qualify based on their years of service and other factors. And that charge or they can opt out and they get a cash payment. That cost is included in the .8s as well.
As it should be.
Yeah.
I think, I used to run like 18.6%, but that was no retirement, so I think that,
You know, yeah, in the private sector, we tend to do 401Ks or simple IRAs, or what have you. You're still doing a defined benefit.
For our post-employment, so that's in addition to the pension.
Mhm.
So there's an earned health insurance benefit at retirement.
But the pension is a defined benefit pension plan. It's not a defined contribution plan.
Yes, yeah,
Private sector, public sector.
yeah.
So that's how.
So, you know, and, yeah, so there are employees that contribute to their pension, so that kind of comes through our books too, and we pay the comptroller's office for that.
So when we go to, just to adjust my private sector thing, when we go to market to hire people, we need to look at our comp and benefits relative to private sector competition, because our benefits on average are significantly higher. Our top line comp may be lower.
Yes, I mean, the pension system that we have now, so for tier 6, it is more closer to like the private sector 401Ks at this point in terms of what they have to contribute. 10 years ago, when everyone was tier 4, where after 10 years you no longer have to contribute, that was a different story, and the pension benefit was of greater value. It's still a good value, but it's not as much of a value difference as it used to be.
Fair enough. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions on 1310? I'll move on to 1330, which is the real property tax division. Increases there relate to the additional 1 FTE that would be needed for the tax sale. And again, that was not included in the 2024 budget due to the uncertainty around that, around foreclosure. The departmental income there, just, fees that are charged out for
Kitty,
those services.
are we filling that position after the first of the year, or is it filled?
It's filled, we've started recruiting now.
Okay.
We did have somebody in place who resigned, and so we are recruiting for that legal aid position. Now, we have several applications actually, for that position.
Okay, thanks.
Kitty, how are the fees that are charged out calculated? What are they based on?
Let me just take a quick look here. I think it's really just based on, they're, a variety of,
It's been a while since I looked at it with Kim.
what's included under departmental income are, like some fees charged for GIS services, credit card transaction fees. But the bigger component of that is,
That's really just a curiosity question,
Okay,
not
yeah.
related to the budget, so that's just a Pierre question. But I
Okay.
am looking at the expenses in the detail, and on account 4590, other contractual, so far for 2024, through 6 months, our expense was $85,000, and you're projecting next year $36,000 total. So I'm not sure what that other contractual is and why it's going down so much from what we're experiencing now.
I believe that we budgeted for that under software maintenance because it is related to our main contractor that we have working on our real property tax system.
Okay, so you believe that expense
Is
of
moved
other
up.
contractual is for that?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the, 4371 account, that's up by 27,000, so I believe that's what it is, but I'll confirm.
4371 account.
Just a couple lines above.
Okay. So, you know, our software maintenance, our experience year-to-date is similar to your budget for next year. But other contractual is going down a whole bunch, so.
The year-to-date, as a reminder, that's for 6
Through June.
months. Yeah, through
Yep.
June, yeah.
Yep, so that's why I say you take this year through June for software maintenance, double it, it's in line with what you're projecting for next year. Not at all the case with other contractual, so,
Okay, yeah, we'll look into that.
okay? And then on the next page, the top of the next page, account 4887, banking fees, credit card transactions. Through June of this year, the expense has been 13,000, and next year you're projecting only 18,000 in total.
I think that we brought it down to be more in line with the last couple
year.
of years.
Yeah, with the actuals for the last couple of years.
Okay? So even though through 6 months of this year, we're at 13,000, and that's significantly less than what you're projecting next year, you're still comfortable with 18,000?
We can look more at the detail, and I'll see what the year-to-date is through this month.
Through
September.
See if it warrants, a change.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think, you know, with the, with those transactions, there's some seasonality to it with regard to when people are coming in to pay and using a credit card.
Oh, that's probably true too, yes,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
But,
That's all I had.
okay. And I believe too, I mean, there is seasonality as well to our other contractor fees, but I'll get back to you one way or another on that, because he comes in a couple times a year, so that's when we get the bill, so, he might have already done the majority of the planned work for the year.
Okay.
Okay, so then, the next account, which is 1989, this is, the staff that's involved with our workers' comp and liability insurance program, and their expenses are offset by, they essentially, their costs get charged out, with the costs associated with liability insurance and workers' comp. So their costs are essentially allocated to all county departments. So there'll always be a net zero local share here. But the only change here is just the contractual increases in wages. And again, the revenues are the revenue offsets to the CS and the MS funds, which I'll talk about a little later. Any questions on that? So I'm scheduled to also talk, on department miscellaneous and a few others, but I know there was a scheduled break in between, so it's up to you whether you wanna go on to something else yet, or,
What time is it?
10:09.
Why don't we keep going? I mean, oh,
okay.
10:30 is our break.
Yeah, I don't know what time it is, I just know it was
10:10.
scheduled after that, those sections.
So if you can get everything done, we can go to lunch at 10:30. I'm just kidding. Why don't we keep going, and then where the natural break at 10:30 is, does that sound good?
Okay,
Is that okay with you,
sure,
Katie?
yes. So department miscellaneous is 99, so it's the last tab in your book. So I'm gonna skip the first page because, so just as a description, so Department 99 is a variety of different expenses and revenues. It's what its title is, miscellaneous. So they're miscellaneous countywide expenses and revenues. So they're revenues and expenses that are not associated with any one particular department. So we'll just walk through there. FTEs, so under 1330, rolls, which that is, we do the tax rolls for, other districts, school districts or municipalities. And so, 60% of, employee time in the tax department is allocated to this department because those are expenses that are charged back to those municipalities, for which we do their tax rolls. Under 1430 countywide employee expense, it is the obligation of the county per the CSEA collective bargaining agreement that we pay for the wages of the CSEA president. We moved that account under miscellaneous, I think, last year, because it's not specific to any one department, it's just an obligation of the county. Moving on to account 1310-9999. They're all revenues in this department, the biggest one being sales tax. We're projecting, utilizing the inflationary factor that the comptroller uses when determining our allowable tax cap increase, which is the lesser of 2% or the rate of inflation. So there's an exhibit on the comptroller's website that shows that the inflationary factor is 3.4%. The tax cap is 2%, therefore the tax cap allowable increase is 2%. So last year, we based the sales tax projected budget increase on that inflationary factor that the comptroller was using, and so that is our proposed rationale again this year. So that 3% increase in sales tax revenue was applied to our year-to-date payments through, I think it was July, and our remaining budgeted payments, or projected payments for the rest of this year. Our projected payments were assumed to be equal to what we actually received in 2023. I know that's a little complicated. So our sales tax model is by actual individual payment. We receive about 2 payments per month. So we took the year-to-date payments for 2024 and increased that by 3.4%. Then I projected out the remaining payments. I projected the remaining payments to be at least equal to what we actually received in 2023 and applied 3.4% on that to come up with our projected 2025 budget.
And so the result of that is a 4% increase from the 2024 budget. I'm looking at the detail now, and that's what that shows.
I don't have my calculator here, but I trust that you did correct math. Yeah, so the net increase is 2,348,000. I'm sorry, that's just that includes the off-track betting revenue as well, so, which has also been trending up.
Yep.
It's about a $2.2 million increase in sales tax.
So OTV's like 150,000?
$1,456,000.
Yeah, it's up $90,000 from last year.
Okay.
And I believe, I mean, that mainly has to do, I believe, to the change in like the sports betting that's now allowed in New York State. So that's, since that was enacted, we've noticed an increase in our off-track betting, receipts. Okay,
I have a question on
Yep.
the sales tax. So our projected still for 2024 is gonna be the 53,744,893?
yeah, right now, I'm projecting to meet our budget. We
Yep.
do get our next payment, it'll be either like Friday this week or early next week. And our October payment is usually one of our bigger, well, it's like our biggest payment of the year. But if we, and that's assuming that the remaining payments that we get are at budget, which I have confidence so far based on our last few payments that they will at least be at budget. Our budget for the rest of the year is lower than what we actually received for those payments in 2023. So if we do end up getting at least what we got in 23, we'll have a slight surplus.
Okay.
Let me know if you need more, we can order some stuff on Amazon. Some more stuff.
One question that I was asking for a fellow legislator in this section was, there's a new dispensary that has been put in place in Jamestown, and it's, supposed to raise, or be able to, I think they thought, was it 1% of sales or some sort of tax? I'm not real familiar with it, but does anyone know anything about what the county is entitled to with the opening of that? So he was curious if there was anything in the budget, because one has now opened, and,
Yeah, at the time, the budget was, it wasn't on my radar that there was one that was opening, but,
Yeah. What,
it-
could you explain what the counties do in that? I don't really know. Do you know?
there is, a percentage of the sales tax that I think that we would be entitled to. I haven't really looked into it in detail. I've been on some email strings with other county finance directors and treasurers that do receive this revenue, so I'll circle back to that to see what, the calculation is, but it might be hard to project right now, but,
Understood, because we
Yeah.
don't have any history, and
Yeah.
it's so new, and, that was kind of my response, but I wanted to at least pay the question forward,
Yeah.
so.
but it's a good thing to have on our,
We
radar.
wanna be conservative, don't go high.
Well, it'll be a bonus,
No pun intended.
maybe this year.
Yeah.
In the sense that it'll, at least we'll have the history next year. And just like the off-track betting, it was possibly coming in, but now it was really, you're seeing it as a bonus, so we're making the adjustment this year, so.
Yeah, so I just, we'll see what I can find out about that this week.
That was my high joke. High.
You got it, Bob.
It's over my head.
Audit and control is a little slow, I've
It-
been a part of it, so I just wanna make sure.
I caught you.
I wanted to be more clever than funny, Travis, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Is there a difference?
I'm getting hungry.
So, question, the controller has an inflation rate of 3.3 you said? The Fed is looking at an inflation rate of just over 2. What's in the controller's soup that's not in the Fed soup?
I can't answer that question, but that exhibit is developed so that it is documented whether or not the inflation factor is lesser or greater than 2%, so
Which is
that
the
we
cap.
know what our tax cap is. So it is a number published by the comptroller, with respect to the
Sometimes
tax cap.
The feds include what they want.
Well, it's, I mean, you know, the
So does
financial
the s-
markets
so
are
does the
forecasting
state.
2.1, 2.2.
But you know what I mean? Like,
So why is the controller 50% out of what the financial markets are forecasting?
1-800-Monopoly.
And it, you know, it might have been at the time this was, I mean, this was published in July, these rates, so I don't know if there was a difference at that point, but,
Or he's looking at a subset of costs that affect the state is different from CPI. which is
yeah,
different
cause
by the way.
there is like, you know, the Northeast CPIs might be slightly different than the national CPI, but.
Lower.
The next, classification is other real property tax items, which is mainly the gain loss on the tax sale, so this account, or the accounts under this classification make up the gain loss, on the auction, when we have an auction, so there was no auction in 2024. This projection is probably a little out of date, considering just some of the recent receipts that, we got in, after a mailing that the tax office did. We see an uptick in collections, so that projection might be a little bit, low. But the 2025 budget just assumes, we will have an auction, but with no net gain, because per the, Supreme Court ruling, we can't have a gain on a sale, so we would, at a minimum, be break even. But we'll continue to incur in, interest earnings, on delinquent properties, so, you know, as we've seen sometime, like during COVID even, the interest and penalties grew, even though we didn't have a sale during those years. We did see higher interest earnings during those years.
Could we raise the penalties?
Yeah.
No. I shouldn't,
I
I didn't
don't-
mean to say that.
Why do you want?
I don't know off the top of my head if there's a limit that the state sets that we can't go over,
We had discussed
I
raising
can't-
the administrative fees.
Sure, something, you know, something in response to that.
The
is
state,
my point.
state's a step ahead, like they usually are, cause they know it's coming.
yeah.
Sure.
And I think they're not gonna allow any, extra income from.
You know, it's just sad in the sense that that's the way that hearing is gone, I guess, and, you know, it's just a way, you know, it was a avenue that the county could actually make right on some of those past receipts, and then also,
Yeah.
you know, at the end of the day, it wasn't like some properties were a loss, some were a gain, right? So, you know, it was an even thing, but.
At the end of the day, though, it was always impressive to do the auction and see $1.6 million brought in. But we lost money.
Yes.
I mean,
Mhm.
because the majority of our properties are sold at a loss. A $5,000 tax bill, we're happy if we get a $500 bid on that. So that 500 cures that $5,000 tax bill.
Correct.
Now, you do get a few gems that come in, but the overall, other than after the COVID, that was the only time we made money. And I don't know, I'm not even so disappointed in that we're not allowed to make money on the properties. I would like to be able to see it as a whole, not an individual property, but if we could take our whole tax auction process, and then at the end, if there's anything left, we give that back, you know what I mean? But if you lose, I say lose, if we don't collect if we got a $10,000 tax bill and we only bring in 5,000, now we're 5,000 in the red. So then if we sell one, $10,000 one for 15,000, we should be able to put those together. And now we've broken even. Unfortunately, it's going on an individual, the way it's set up now, an individual property sale. So if you lose 20,000 on one,
The others don't
it doesn't make
it
any
up.
difference, but if you gain $100,000 on one, you gotta pay, and if nothing else, allow us to cover all of our expenses, which we,
That would be logical, though.
yeah, well,
That would be.
and I'm not, I'm
Yeah,
just,
so,
anyhow.
I get it,
like,
yeah.
you know, again, the real property tax director, along with the law department, is working on some different scenarios that can be considered with their, you know, pros and cons for each scenario, so I'm sure that'll take a couple of
And it's a moving
months,
target.
you know,
They're
discussions.
changing, this is
Yeah,
what you can do
there's a lot of
today,
moving
so you
parts,
do it
yeah.
today, but then they say, well, wait a minute, we're changing it back to last month, so you can't do it today, even though you did it today. And that's why we're holding tight for right now. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay. Use of property money that, or I'm sorry, departmental income, that's the indirect cost allocations from our enterprise funds. We talked a little bit yesterday, for those of you who were here, about the indirect costs. So, in the private sector, you might consider that your G&A or overhead costs are allocated to our enterprise funds. And so that comes back to, the general fund under this account, to cover the overhead and G&A costs for our enterprise funds, like the sewer districts mainly. So that's what this revenue is. So that'll fluctuate year to year, because it's based on actual costs from the last full year. Interest earnings, so this is interest earnings on our bank account balances, so this is not our investment portfolio interest earnings, that's, you'll see that on in a different account. Just to point out why it's that large of a reduction in the 2024 budget, as you may recall, included $800,000 of the interest earnings from the ARPA funds that we had earned. And that was used to offset expenses in the 2024 budget, so that's not a recurring revenue. Under miscellaneous, so this is where, for those of you that were here yesterday, under the health department is where the expense side of this is, but by the state comptroller's chart of accounts, the opioid settlement funds are to be recorded in this line item, so the revenue is here, but the expense is in the health department budget. So in the 2025 budget, they're proposing to use $862,000 of those settlement funds to offset expenses in the health department budget, mainly for the MAT program, for medical in the jail.
I waited all night and all day to find out.
Just to make sure it was here.
There was the promise we were gonna see it, and there it is.
Flipping the page over, under New York State aid, so this is, in 2023, just going back there where you'll see it, the revenue here was greater. That was the last year the county was receiving a subsidy from the state, related to the loss of the NRG pilot agreement. 2024, we are trending a little bit less than that for the tribal compact revenue, which is the only other revenue in this account now. So I did lower the budget a little bit. Okay, so that was nine, well, that's not all of miscellaneous, that's
We
just
got
the
more?
1310,999. So there's a few more pages, but I think these should go more quickly. So 1330 roll, again, that's just the expenses of people in the tax office and postage and printing costs associated with the tax rolls that we run for other municipalities. And then we do charge those municipalities, so we recoup our costs. 1335, we have $15,000 generally is kept in the budget for legal fees in the event that there is a challenge to an assessment, and we need outside counsel to help us with that, challenge. You know, we fortunately haven't had any major challenges that warranted, you know, these fees, but if they do happen from time to time, so we've kept a minimal amount in the budget if that does occur. 1362, these are the search and legal fees in postage, on foreclosed properties. Some of those fees are passed on to the delinquent property, so majority of it is recouped. 1430 COEM, again, these are the costs associated with the CSEA union president that the county is obligated to cover. 1955, these are our pilot agreements, so this is a schedule generally prepared by the IDA. So it fluctuates year to year. Some pilots drop off and some new ones come on, so just a slight change from last year. Account 1985 is municipal sales tax, so the accounting treatment of this is that we have to record the expense and the revenue, so the state sends us the full amount of sales tax, the county share and the municipal share, and we have to, so we receive that revenue, and then we send that to the municipalities, and that's recorded as an expense. So this offsets each other. There's a slight adjustment we need to make of $720. It should balance to zero. We can contemplate that change. I would guess maybe at audit and control, we might further discuss sales tax, and if there's any other changes warranted, and then we could make that minor adjustment if there's no other change of sales tax. 1990, the contingent account. So this is an account where if it was desired that we could budget for a contingency. We've only done that a few times, but last year, what was included in the contingent account, because toward the end of the budget hearing process, we became aware of an increase in the retirement rates, and rather than amending every department kind of at the last minute, so to speak, we included that increase under contingency, just so that the dollars were in the overall budget. So that's what was included in 2024. There's no proposed contingency in the tentative budget. Account 2490 is community college tuition, so not just JCC, but any Chautauqua County resident that attends community college in New York State. They do charge back part of the tuition. The 2025 budget is based on a 2% increase over the 2024 adopted budget. And we're trending pretty close to that, so, we're trending close to budget for this year, so. The next account, we do have a reserve to offer loans to the different fire districts. And so this account just reflects the repayment of those loans and interest earnings on what's still in the reserve. Okay, debt service account 9730. So the expenses here are the principal and interest on our outstanding bonds. We do have a couple of revenues that are dedicated toward the repayment of those bonds, one being mortgage tax. We did see an uptick in mortgage tax receipts for a couple of years, after COVID. It's starting to level off a bit, so I did not propose any increase in those receipts. One of our bonds we issued, kind of on the behalf of JCC for, the building of their third dorm building. And so therefore, they pay that debt service directly, but we have to record the expense and the revenue on our book. So it's a net zero to us because they make the debt service payments, but we have to reflect the expense, and then that payment that JCC makes is recorded as a revenue to us. And then we do still receive a subsidy, from the state, for when they did this front entrance in the court projects. And so, that's what the 325,000 is. And then the next couple, the next account are just the interfund transfers, to the D and the DM funds. We'll talk about, I'll walk through the local share spreadsheet maybe after the break, but when we collect the property tax, we don't reflect it in the D and DM funds, but the net local share of the D and DM funds is covered by the property tax, so that's becomes an interfund transfer, so, it's more of an accounting thing, but, and then the 9950, this reflects, what is being budgeted for capital projects, in our H fund, and the dedicated revenues toward that, so, so in, so this will fluctuate, so the 2023 too, just as to point out there, a lot of capital, projects that were funded by ARPA were, done in 2023, so that's why that figure, is so high compared to this year and next year, but also for 2024, projected would include some of the ARPA projects that have been adopted during the year. The 2025 capital budget does not include ARPA projects, so it's just projects of the county, which, are included in Exhibit E in the front of the book under the tentative budget, and Exhibit E shows all the capital projects that are being funded or proposed in the tentative budget, and tomorrow, I guess, during public facilities, there'll be a review of the capital projects that are included in Exhibit E. Down below, one of our dedicated revenues for capital projects is our interest earnings. So whatever we, the financial management policy now says that we'll budget our, whatever our last full year of realized earnings are. So the 1.9 million budgeted here is what we earned in 2023, our actual interest receipts. We do as, we have to book the change in market value, so sometimes we might see negative earnings adjustments for the market value. We do have to book that, but we don't particularly budget for it because it's kind of too hard. What we've budgeted for capital projects is actually interest earnings that we actually have received. So they're realized earnings, and those earnings are dedicated toward capital projects. They don't cover all of our capital project requests. So I'm gonna, I don't think we have any other. So that was the last page under Department 99, but then we did utilize some reserves and fund balance toward capital projects, which is reflected in the local share spreadsheet. So kind of your first tab under the operating tab, we included $2 million for capital projects from general fund balance. So we have the 1.9 from interest earnings, and then the proposed budget includes, utilizes $2 million of the general fund balance for capital projects. And again, that is identified in Exhibit E, which projects we funded with fund balance. So that is miscellaneous. I think maybe after the break, we could go through the fund balances and the local share spreadsheet and the uses of, or if you
Yep.
wanna do that now, we can. it's up to
Sounds
you.
good. Let's take 15-minute break. It is 20 minutes of 11. So 5 of 11.
Liability.
Huh? We'll do fund balance,
Oh,
and then the rest, and then we're gonna eat lunch.
Do we hear anything yet?
There we go. Hello, 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 hello. Test, test. 1, 2, 3. There we go.
We'll start with the fiscal status tab. So from the beginning of your book, under the tentative budget book section, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 tabs in. It's called fiscal status. Yeah.
It smells like onions.
Well, I got it.
Have you eaten onions?
No, pepper.
Oh. Peppers and onions.
There's no onions.
Oh, it's on these big tabs?
Yeah, so, yeah, if you go to the very beginning of your book, and then go 3 tabs in.
And it'll say it.
Save me a trip to the
Fiscal
weightlifting gym this
Fiscal
weekend.
status.
1, 2.
Need to help you.
So the tab name is fiscal status.
Fiscal status.
So that's after capital budgets.
It's after personal services.
And it's before budget
Um,
details by department.
Board.
It's
So
actually like
there's,
5 tabs back. In my book.
you're right. Sorry. So there's operating budget, capital budget, personal services, and then fiscal status. So this schedule just reflects, the fund balance or net position for each of our funds as of 12/31/23. So that's just from, those figures are from our financial statements. And then our estimated fund balance, for this year ending 12/31/24. For the general fund, I'm projecting a reduction based on some of our current known variances for this year. So that reflects, like about a 1.5 or so, or I forget the actual number, but I put in a projection, based on our current known deficits. That number can fluctuate a little bit between now and the end of the year, especially with respect to how our sales tax comes in between now and the end of the year. That would be the biggest factor as we know today. The rest of the columns reflect what is utilized of fund balance or reserves. And then the far column would be what we would be projecting our fund balance to be at year-end 2025. So in that second column there, the estimated balances, so some of the enterprise funds, I'm not projecting, didn't get into the detail of projecting variances for those for this year end. But the third column there does reflect, and we're gonna go back to the local share spreadsheet in a minute, whatever use of reserves that are being contemplated in the 2025 budget. So just wanted to point this schedule out to you so that you know where it is. If you want to refer back to it, this does reflect all the fund balances for each of the funds, the general funds, the highway funds, all of the sewer and water districts. So from here, I'd like to go back to the local share spreadsheet just to point out a couple of things there. That's the very first tab, operating budget. So from the front of your book, it's the very first tab. So I like to draw attention to this exhibit because this, to me, this is the budget. So this is where you'll see appropriations, revenues, and how we get to what the levy is in summary. So, and this reflects all of our funds. So the first page is the 2025 tentative budget. The next page behind that is what last year's adopted budget figures were, and then the third page reflects the change between the 2 years. So on the first page, mainly, getting back to the fund balances, so that fifth column in, appropriated fund balance and use of reserves. So for the general fund, I just wanted to go over some of those uses of reserves that are included throughout the budget. We already talked about $2 million for capital projects. And just to refresh your memory on our financial management policy, does recommend that we utilize fund balance for things to be considered one-time expenses, so to speak, rather than use fund balance for recurring operating expenses, which would put us in a imbalance at some point. My list of the next line item down. So getting back to our collective bargaining agreement. So in our two bargaining agreements includes a provision for bonuses. The bonuses were negotiated into the contract, having a lot to do with recruitment and retention, which we've been struggling with the last few years, and getting our salaries kind of up to market value. The bonuses are contingent on if inflation is above or below the 2%. So now, this might sound contradictory, but one of the biggest concerns of the union at the time we were negotiating the contract is that inflation was quite high and their wages weren't keeping up with inflation. So obviously, things have changed a little bit, inflation's coming back down, but the way we structured the contract over the 4 years is if inflation does continue to be above the 2% mark, we have to pay out the bonuses. Should inflation fall below the 2% mark, we won't pay the bonuses. So, as you know, the comptroller's inflation factor for next year is 3.4%. Therefore, inflation is projected to be higher than the 2%. So the bonuses will be payable in 2025. Like we did for 2024, we've considered that to be one-time expense because the bonuses also were structured in a way that the annual increases would the bonuses are not added to the base pay when we're considering, wage increases. So, they do get a wage increase, but the bonus is separate from that. It would be one time. It's not ongoing after this contract expires unless something like that was negotiated into the next agreement. So, we propose to utilize fund balance to, offset the cost of those bonuses. And that's for our CSEA union and our CCSCA union, which is the Sheriff's Corrections Unit, so those two bargaining agreements. The next use of fund balance are for a variety of items, and I'm going to go over those with you now, so if you want to write them down. You'll see tomorrow in the Buildings and Grounds budget, there's $500,000 associated with pressure washing, to repair, so to speak, of the HRC building. That being a one-time item, we're proposing to utilize fund balance to offset that expense. $149,500 is included for Chautauqua Lake. So in the 2024 budget, there was $500,000 added to the budget for that and funded with fund balance, with the idea that we'd kind of have a revolving account available, and we project to utilize about $149,500 this year, and this would be to replenish that reserve, so to speak, back up to $500,000. So that you'll see in the planning department budget. Safety net, which was discussed yesterday at Human Services, is the proposed increase is $508,750. With the consideration that the upward trend would not necessarily be recurring, we propose to utilize $508,000 of fund balance to fund that increase in safety net. You'll see when Public Safety Committee presents, the fly car increase is about $1 million or so, and we've proposed to utilize $500,000 of fund balance in consideration of that. One could argue that it's still somewhat of a startup program. We do anticipate revenues to improve, as we move forward with that program. So we don't anticipate that the local share will continue at $1 million level, and therefore kind of bridging the next year, utilizing $500,000 of fund balance to offset the increased costs for the fly car program. In the sheriff's office, there's $100,000 for it's kind of like, how would you describe, software and training software related to the body cameras. And so there's one-time expense associated with the implementation of this new software training program for the body cameras. And so we've utilized $100,000 for that first year toward the first year implementation costs of the Axon agreement related to the body cameras. So those 5 items make up the $508,000 use of fund balance. The next line item down, designation for helicopter debt service. So a few years ago, we had some helicopters that we sold, and the proceeds from the sale were reserved for the repayment of the remaining debt service for those helicopters. So that's just offsetting the debt service payment for the helicopter. I think next year's the last year of those payments. I should have mentioned earlier, I thought we did also use $585,000 from capital projects reserved toward the capital projects. I forgot to mention that when we were reviewing the capital projects. So all told, the funding for capital projects includes $1.9 million for interest earnings, $2 million from fund balance, and $585,000 from our reserve for capital. And then lastly, planning, aside from the occupancy tax projects, funded with the 2025 receipts, they'll present some items to be funded with the reserve for occupancy tax. So that will be discussed at the planning committee meeting. The highway fund, we propose to use $600,000 of the highway fund balance. It currently has, I believe, roughly $800,000 right now, but we are projecting a surplus from the SALT and the D fund balance for this year, which will return a few $100,000. So comfortable with the utilization of $600,000 out of next year. Just for those of you who are newer, when it comes to the D and the DM fund balances, they can only be utilized within those funds. So D fund balance can't come back over to the general fund. It has to be essentially reused within the highway budget. A lot of times those surpluses just generally come from maybe weather prevents us from completing all the work that was planned for a given year, so that appropriation of funds remains in the D fund once it's appropriated there. And then for the DM fund, we propose to utilize $100,000 of that fund balance. Any questions on those? All right, then lastly, on fund balances and things in the projections, which was an insert in your binder. I'm not gonna go through this in detail, but I'm happy to answer any questions, offline if you're looking through it and have questions on it, but, the assumptions utilized in the projections are on the second page there. Obviously, these are projections, these are the assumptions that were used. We can always change assumptions and do other scenarios, but this is just letting you know, based on these assumptions, these are the projected outcomes. So that will project out the net through 2029, and also assumes that, one of the bigger assumptions is that we would raise taxes up to the allowable limit under the tax cap each year. And then it'll reflect if we have a surplus or deficit based on all the other assumptions at the end of the day from that. But the reason I'm pointing this out, because that all feeds into, if you look further into the projected general fund balance going out to 2029. And I just like people to be aware, so the bottom of the fund balance page does reflect where we are as a percent of appropriations, which was the change we made to the financial management policy to track our unobligated fund balance as a percentage of appropriation. So for 2025, and you saw this data was included in the county executive's presentation, but based on our projections of a deficit and the top of the 2024 column of $2.5 million for this year, which could change. That's just that's a more conservative number rather than, and the uses of fund balance proposed in the 2025 budget, our unobligated fund balance as a percentage of appropriations would be 12.1%. And then you can see the percentages projected out the remainder of the year based on that. So again, there's a lot of detail here. I'm not gonna go through every line, it would take us the rest of the day, but I'm happy to meet with you separately or, to go over any questions you might have on that, but I just wanted to point out where you can find this information. Okay. So unless there's any questions on that, all of that stuff, I can go through, which hopefully won't take very long, the workers' comp, liability, and health insurance funds. back toward the very back of your book, tab 43, is the self-insurance, which is our workers' comp fund. Effectively, you've kind of already approved this budget because, I think it was the July meeting, we approved the workers' comp rates for the municipalities. So we do have a municipal workers' comp plan. The county is the plan administrator, so we incur all the costs, manage the third-party administrator for paying claims, and then we assess premiums back to all of the participants. Their premiums are based in part on what their wages are for each of their municipalities and what their claims experience is. So that's what makes up the assessments. So some of the costs included in the plan include administrative costs, so we talked about in the insurance division, for the administrative costs of the 2 staff people of the county, and our actuary. That makes up the administrative costs. We have a third-party administrator, which we pay, and then just generally our claims that we're paying out. We do offset the expenses of the plan by some interest earnings and other rebates that we receive, and then the net amount is what we charge out to the plan participants. I will point out just a couple pages in the summaries in 1720-9999. There is some additional costs included there for some settlements so Dennis does a really good job of looking for opportunities to settle claims, reducing our long-term costs. So there's a couple that he's working on right now that we anticipate that would close in 2025. We were able to keep claims, they went down, assessments relatively stayed flat this year, just decreased slightly, so he's been able to just keep our claims experience level. It's decreased several years in a row, so it's, the plan's doing very well right now.
Yes, and Kitty,
Yeah.
I always like to point out that the claims experience has decreased over the last couple of years, and now it's pretty well leveled off. And that's a testimony to Dennis and the work that he does with the plan participants, working on their claims, working on their risks and their safety and safe work environments. I know that the 2 towns and the 1 village that I represent actually both saw a significant reduction the last couple of years and again this year, because their claims have continued to go down, and they just can't say enough good things about the work that Dennis has done to help them.
Thank you. We appreciate Dennis in our office too, just for his camaraderie as well. I will pass it along.
Thank you.
All right, so the next one I'll talk about is, I guess 98, which is our liability program. So there's a lot behind the summaries here and even the detail. I have other backup worksheets that go into formulating this budget, but for the most part, it represents all of the premiums that we pay for a variety of different insurances. We have insurances from cybersecurity, medical malpractice, property insurance, vehicle insurance, to name a few. There were a couple of insurances that went up a little bit more than normal, and that was our property insurance was up about 60,000, and our auto insurance was up about 104,000. And, I mean, with regard to the auto, that's just a matter of equipment that, you know, we have on hand. So, this fund here too, all of the expenses are incurred here. We allocate the charges back to county departments, so the CS fund is always net zero in terms of the budget, and even our year-end reconciliation is done. So, every department receives a charge back for insurance based on their allocation. There's an allocation methodology for each premium that we pay, so, you know, cyber primarily goes back to the IT department. Medical malpractice only goes to the departments that would incur that liability. Auto only goes back to the departments that have equipment and automobiles, et cetera. So, property insurance and general liability is spread across all departments based on their number of FTEs and things like that, and percent of square footage that they occupy in our buildings.
So these are actual fees we pay to insurance companies. So to what extent do we self-insure these risks? You know, or said another way, what's our deductible policy? How much do we take on our own?
I think that, I mean, the deductible is a little bit different for each policy. So I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can get that information. And then, what was your other question? There's two questions.
Well, it's really
And
the
then
deductible in terms of self-insurance, because we can certainly afford, within the $300 million budget, we can afford several $100,000 of claims in any given year out of our own budget. So, without having to pay a premium for an insurance company to cover it. So how do we set that level?
The deductible level?
Well,
Yeah, so
if-
that's like, each policy, though, we do have deductibles in some
Sure.
cases, but we're not self-insured.
Well, but a deductible is a
It's through-
self-insurance.
It's through, so the deductibles, an estimate for deductibles is included in the budget.
I understand.
But Kitty, we're not self-insuring any of these liability
No,
claims.
not these.
But when we get to health,
Health insurance, we
we
are.
do some self-insurance.
Yeah, we're fully self-insured for a health plan.
Okay. But it's, you know, but do you understand my point is, on insurance, as kind of a general policy, one shouldn't be buying coverage for an oscillation that you can cover
We ha-
easily within your own
We
establishment.
participate in an insurance reciprocal. It's a New York State insurance reciprocal, and so it's a pooled insurance, an insurance pool of entities in New York State. So, I would,
Yeah.
not,
you're-
all- pardon?
And you're required to be part of that pool?
We're not required, but it does benefit us.
Okay.
And, you know, I can have Dennis maybe, you know, reach out to you. I mean, he can get into a lot more detail in terms of, he also does a good job negotiating our premiums, you know, with the broker that we utilize. Majority of our insurances are through the reciprocal, but, you know, some are not. Like cybersecurity, we're lucky that we even get cybersecurity insurance. And we pay about $100,000 for it. But I'm sure you've heard plenty of stories in the news that cyber claims, if you have an incident, can be millions of dollars. So,
Fair
you know,
enough.
and in some instances, counties aren't even able to procure at all cybersecurity insurance anymore. It's too
Well, I mean,
costly.
I'd be happy to talk to them,
Yeah.
because for instance, we might decide in terms of lowering our bill for cybersecurity is that we'll take, in any given year, the first $200,000.
Oh, yeah, so he will negotiate what level of deductible we're willing to take
Right.
for, yes, he does look at that closely, and in some cases, we've, like on our workers' comp plan, there is an example there where stop-loss coverage for workers' comp was going up and up, but we rarely kind of hit that balloon, so we decided to just include $300,000 in our budget in lieu of purchasing stop-loss insurance, because we just hadn't.
It
you
made
know,
sense.
Yeah, Yeah, so he does look at those scenarios and has come to me with recommendations when it's warranted to, lower or increase our deductible to get a better rate, yeah.
Again, Dennis does a wonderful job for us.
Okay, to bore you a little bit more, we can talk about, I know Debbie's, gonna be here soon, I would guess. I can get started on the M fund, which is the health insurance fund. And maybe I'll just kind of talk in an overview here too, but of course we can get into detail. So the M fund, I'm sorry, that's tab number 96. Oh, and I have a handout. There's kind of a illustration of how our M fund is structured and the costs and revenues that kind of come into play with you guys have kind of seen this
Thank you.
before, I know. I'll just give you a
Color?
fresh copy.
Have the color.
I know, I put the color on it. So it would be more clear when I print it.
Color though is so colorful.
Yes, it is.
So in the M fund, this is where we incur all of our expenses associated with our health plan. As Pierre mentioned, we are fully insured for all components now of our health plan, so that includes medical, dental, vision, chiropractic, pharmacy. So all of those costs are incurred in the M fund. And when we come up with a budget for the M fund, we consider all the expenses, then also other revenues to the M fund aside from employee or employer contributions. For example, stop loss recoveries and pharmacy rebates. So we take all the expenses less those two revenues to come up with what our rates are for employees when they elect single, family of two, or family of three coverage. So essentially, this is boiled down into the rates that are charged for each level of coverage. And then in each county department budget, based on the employee elections, the cost for health insurance is incurred there. So the M fund is another fund where the budget is net zero because anything incurred here is an expense. The net expense is charged out to departments through the rates that we charge for the health plan. What's also included is the cost for retirees. So we talked about earlier that retirees, they get an earned health insurance benefit at retirement. So they can either elect to continue coverage or get a cash out payment. So those are all the components here. Is kind of just, and then also it covers the costs of the insurance administration of the under the Human Resources Department. So the Human Resources Department is, responsible for all the administration of the plan. I just kind of do all the behind the scenes numbers to come up with the costs that we need to budget for based on, the needs of the plan. So now that we are self-insured, next year will be the third year, I believe, that all components are self-insured. So now we've developed a little bit more trend, especially with the medical, to be able to base our budget on actual claims experience. So we are, let's move into here. Under 1930, that's primarily all of the active employee costs for the health plan.
So that's going up 18, so in real money, before we allocate it back out to the other departments, our judgments and claims are expected to go up 18%.
Well, a component of revenue is recorded in a different department, so the net, because the stop loss, the way the stop loss works is it wasn't reflected this way in the 2024 budget, because it was kind of new, I didn't realize how the expenses were gonna be incurred, but with stop loss, you have to pay you get up to the limit, and then you continue to pay, but then the amount over the limit you get as a reimbursement. So it's not that stop loss starts paying these claims directly, you incur the cost of the claim and then they provide the reimbursement. So the next page down here is the reimbursement, so the expenses included. Part of that 3.3 million increase is stop loss claims that are reimbursed in the next.
Who are they reimbursed by?
We have stop loss insurance that
So
we
that's a
purchase.
third-party
Yeah.
insurance.
So overall, the health plan costs did increase, that including medical, pharmacy, dental, vision, about 9%. So it is a little bit higher than we've seen in a few years. But I'd say it's not necessarily inconsistent with, the healthcare industry. But we have been fortunate for, a lot of, over the last 15 years to have generally been under what other places we're seeing. We do have a high deductible health plan, and which has saved us a lot of money from the traditional PPO plan that we had previously. So we still have a couple of retirees still on that plan, and those costs are just, $50,000 plus for a family plan, versus like half of that cost for a high deductible plan, and we have a house, here's Debbie now, she can talk to a little more about, but, you can come up, Deb, because we kind of started the, fund, we're just going over the components and, but like I said. So it's just kind of summarizing the changes to the M fund and the overall cost to the health plan based on claims went up to about 9%.
Introduce yourself to the folks at home.
Sorry, Debbie Bukowski, Director of Human Resources.
Thank you.
And so we've cut, because we were running a little bit ahead, and so we just started on this, but at this point, it's based on claims experience, our current trends, so I don't know if there's anything you want to add in terms of the health plan in general, but I just went over the cost structure.
You can say no.
No.
Whatever Kitty said.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
But sorry, Kitty, what I heard you say right at the end was that our average cost per family plan runs about $25,000 a year.
I can, rates, I'll tell you in 1 second. Pretty sure I have one of these pages has a rate detail. Oh, yes, so we have 3 tiers for our employees. There's a single, family of 2, or family of 3. So the proposed 2025 rates are about $9,200 for single, $18,000 for family of 2, and $28,600 for a family of 3. Compared to if we still had the traditional PPO plan, a family of 3 PPO plan is $49,000.
All right,
But
so-
we only have that for retirees, a few retirees who are finishing up their benefit, and we still have to offer that plan to them because that's what the plan was when they retired. But,
They're grandfathered in.
yeah.
Okay. Still a fair bit more than I pay for some of my family employees, which is a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, which isn't bad.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think I'm in Obviously, if you have any follow-up questions after today, just feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer them. And I'll turn it over to Debbie.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just slide this up here.
I know, it's, yep. Musical chairs here. I'm gonna move this one here.
And this will be tab 23 in the books.
I'm there.
Hey there, okay. Okay, so I'm assuming we can start with head count. No change to head count from last year. We did have a reallocation, 0.1 between benefits and the HR side of my office.
Where do you stand as far as staffing? As far as, you have a head count here of how many you could potentially have. How many do you have?
We have 11.4. And the 0.4 is, it basically comes down to exam monitors. Utilizing people on a casual basis to have coverage for monitors for civil service exams. So the open position right now, compliance officer, which we have the deputy compliance officer, which I am actively doing. And then the last position was, I believe in last year's budget, it was a personnel technician.
Yes.
I am repurposing that head count. I had, it was approved last year, or for 2024. Just seeing where everything is going with recruitment efforts, and civil service backlogs, just that entire process of recruiting, exams, getting through, getting people right to orientation. I didn't wanna fill a position of a, personnel technician. I think we need a dedicated recruiter, which we already have the title approved through the county. We had one back in 1976. Ironically enough. So the title
Good year.
exists. I'm just gonna be repurposing that budgeted headcount for the focus on recruitment efforts.
Terry?
The compliance officer, we had somebody that retired. Could we possibly contract with that person? As opposed to filling that position? Just a question.
I don't believe there was an appetite for contracted work.
You contacted her?
Not her, it was
Or
through,
him.
through Bonadeo,
Okay,
through Bonadeo.
okay.
And with me taking on those duties, there's actually, there's cost savings there.
Okay.
Versus what the request was to, contract through Bonadeo.
But there's more work for you in this area, which takes you away from other things too.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, but I have a really good team,
Okay,
and, I think with using this additional title, moving it from the personnel technician to a recruiter, I think that focus is necessary.
more efficient?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
I got a non-budget question. The civil service exams, is that something we request to do, or does the state offer a schedule, or it seems like we need maybe to do more of them?
So, the answer is both.
Okay, thank you.
We,
No, I'm kidding. Okay.
You can stop right there.
okay. There are some titles that are scheduled by the state. They provide us with that annual schedule, and they tell us exactly what titles are going to be given on the specific Saturday.
And then there are others, as we appoint people into specific titles, if they're outside of that state schedule, we have to request, the exam, and then with New York State Civil Service, and then they'll kind of plug that title into the existing schedule of exams throughout the year.
So every time we have a test, we pay the state a fee?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And we make up part of that by
With
some
it-
type of a fee to
yes.
the people taking the test?
yes,
But
yes, so.
when I hear that, you know, some of them are a year apart, and we're waiting for those employees, and you get the list of 4,
Mhm.
and none of them are
None of
what
them
you
are
want,
interested, yep,
or
yep,
they're not interested, or whatever.
yes,
Then you wait another year, man, that's a real slow way of filling positions.
exactly,
Well, and as much as
Yes.
it's a gamble for the employee to wait that year, it's a gamble for us to hope they pass in a year.
correct,
And you take the time and the efforts to teach them how to do the job and all the training and benefits. And if they don't pass the test, then they can no longer be employed.
correct,
Test before we have to fire them.
I don't know.
No, it's a good question.
Yeah, the only thing that we know is we're giving the test on a certain date.
correct.
Everything else is,
Correct.
Right.
And we can hire before the test is given, that's where provisional status comes into play, and I
Ah.
think that's, you know, to the point of, if they fail, we now have an employee being paid benefits, all of the other perks, they're a union member, they're paying dues potentially, and if they fail, we have 60 days to remove them
60.
from the title.
Or take it again and pass, right?
If they fail, they cannot be appointed to a second provisional appointment. If they fail.
is that common? Does it it happens?
It happens.
Okay, that's good enough.
It happens. Yes.
Forget the common part.
Lisa, they could also pass, but not be reachable.
I
That's,
got it.
that's when they can take it again, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
That happens most of the time.
So can I just be specific, like Kitty was mentioning, they need these positions filled.
Mm-hmm.
How often, is that test just given once a year?
He's referring to the senior account clerk list, cause it's my understanding it's already exhausted and we just got results like in July.
Oh, is it already, we're already through it? Yeah,
So that's an
Yeah.
annual thing?
correct.
Can we request it?
I don't believe that's one that we can move to, basically what you're asking is continuous recruitment.
What
where
does it
we-
cost us if we request a test, you know? Is there an average?
If the state has it on an annual basis, we can't request it sooner.
What about tests that we can request? Is there like an average cost? Like, we wanna do it for position XYZ, and they will allow us to offer the test off-cycle.
There's no different cost than any other
So
exam.
what does it cost then for us to do it, to get a
For
test?
us, I believe it's but we pay the state $7.50 for every exam candidate.
Okay.
Plus,
So it's the number of participants that drives the cost?
Correct.
plus
Yes,
the pay for monitors for the test,
and yes,
or
Yeah,
administrators.
yeah.
But the state charges us $7.50.
state charges us $7.50, yes,
And then that entails them, they get the test back, they do the grading and everything?
correct,
And then
Correct.
they give us the report.
correct,
But then there's a lag in time between that and, so a one-year
Correct.
cycle turns into a 18 months.
correct,
Okay,
yes.
it sounds about right.
Yes, yes, so, it seems maybe in the last 4 weeks, the state has been making progress in their backlog of exams, as far as scoring and providing the results to the, municipalities. I do know that New York State Civil Service is, looking to turn civil service and exams on its head. They're asking statewide, county personnel or HR directors, if civil service were to go away, what would the new process look like? So whether that is less paper exams, more online, what they call training and experience, where, you know, candidates are just typing in their actual training and experience, versus the in-person, paper form, Scantron.
It seems antiquated, this system.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, it seems like we could pay twice as much if we could get it twice as fast.
Well, and I've even offered, we went to a conference in June, for New York State civil service HR professionals. I was not the only one in the room who was, you know, saying, hey, I can figure out how to budget to pay for a Scantron machine that I can have on site, and we can just zip those Scantrons right through, and then we can certify the results and like turn it around. We can then certify and send the results to the state.
Saturday,
So
Monday.
you could
Exactly.
contract it with the school up the road.
Exactly,
Instead of 6 months.
correct, 6 to 9 months,
I mean, I'm
yes.
sure the state's aware of, we're not the only county that's
No.
not,
No,
doesn't have an employee pool.
correct.
It's all our
Correct.
municipalities too, cause they
Yes.
go off these same lists.
Yeah.
And
It's
school
really sad,
districts.
yeah, that the state has really hasn't been on top of correcting this and this being a lag.
So,
You know.
to be fair, the state has created the HELPS program where municipalities, so towns, schools, villages, the county, statewide can submit a request for any title that we want to temporarily remove from competitive status. So we would essentially stop the exam. So we can hire permanent, as soon as someone is hired, they would serve their probationary period and they would not have to take an exam. I have some serious concerns about that program. I've voiced those concerns all the way to the New York State Commissioner of Civil Service. What they've essentially done is their backlog in exams has been shifted to a backlog in rules resolutions at the state level, because every single title has to be put on a rules resolution, and there's a whole process to get that done, including public hearings. We submitted a rules resolution, different topic, just to update our county, classified rules for civil service. In February, it just went to their commission in September and got approved. So all they've done is shifted their backlog of exams to now rules resolutions, because all of these titles are being pushed through. I know there's a request, for the governor to approve if any title is approved within any municipality through the HELPS program, that title can then be considered non-competitive statewide, so no exam.
So it can be done without an exam.
Yeah, but then you gotta worry about the resumes.
Well, yeah, okay.
Then that probationary period becomes even more important, because that's,
Boot camp.
right,
So we're hiring people that need a civil service test, that never took a civil service test, but become a permanent employee
Permanent
because
employee.
of the loopholes or whatever you
correct,
want to say.
correct.
Huh.
We, internally, we would need to revamp all of our higher titles that are currently written, where to be promotional into that title, you have to serve competitively in the lower title. That's, I mean, almost every single job description would need to be updated,
Right.
you know.
Let's come up with all new titles. And
So
then we just
helps
hire
doesn't
whoever
really
we
help
want.
us.
Correct,
Okay.
correct,
I don't,
correct.
no time on that, but thank you, and keep pushing for it. Good.
Deb, do applicants still pay $25 per test?
15 per test,
Oh, okay.
yes. I think,
it. It's even less than I thought.
I think sheriffs pay 25,
I thought we covered all that.
I think.
Don't we cover the sheriffs?
Yeah, I think those may be free
Sheriffs and
for
police
the sheriff's
officers?
department.
No, I think state exam has waived their fees. We still collect the fees,
Okay,
yes.
I believe you. Sort of.
Any other questions on headcount?
No. I mean, the topic for the last few years has just been lack of employees, so.
Right, right,
this seems like the
recruitment,
forefront
retention.
of the
Yes,
issue.
yes.
Not you, but the, just
Yeah.
seems like we're talking about like 1953 things. Not 1953, the year 1953.
Right.
Are in place for today's, and it's not working. Okay, go ahead, sorry,
Okay.
not sorry.
Okay, so on to the next page. This is the combined summary. Did you want me to go into this detail or skip to the next one where it breaks it down by
By departments.
Oh, we're going to
benefit
the
or?
A 1430?
Yes. Yes, so 1430, I guess for my purposes, or just for personnel services, the 45,411, basically due to contract increases, management group increases, and there's also a 27th pay period for 2025. So that is factored into that 45.4. Questions on that?
Mainly everything that you've got a, explanation for is what people have been addressing as we go.
Yep,
So we don't have to do every single line, just,
yes, so that's, I mean, other than health insurance
Right.
benefits, yeah, so,
Which, there were multiple that switched to family, which is why there's such a large increase. I think it was 3 employees went from either opt-out or single to family insurance during the course of this year.
I have a question. You're projecting that the personnel services are gonna come in at 600,000, which is a significant, 142,000 below.
There is the full-time compliance officer position and some other, the vacancies, all of
Just the
that's in there,
vacancies.
yeah, but that's, there's a full-time FTE of the compliance officer that's not been filled this year, so that's in there.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a couple of
In addition to,
contractual-
there is the vacancy she mentioned earlier too, that we're making, so there's 2 full-time basically
Sure.
positions that are
So
vacant.
those are the two positions.
I have a couple of contractual questions. So looking at the detail on page 2 of 5, middle of the page, account number 4740, publicity promotion. I
yes,
appreciate that you're projected the next year's budget to go down by $7,800. But I question, in '22, we spent 12,000. Last year, we spent 4,000. This year, through half the year, we've spent 5,600. Are we still thinking we're gonna spend 30,000 next year?
I can't speak to what was done in 2022. As far as what was budgeted for 2024, that was, we were assuming the cost for utilizing Indeed and paying for those job postings to remain at the top of a search, to be more visible, hopefully get more clicks. Getting more clicks means getting more applicants. Yes, my plan is that I plan to decrease it for next year, but my hope is with a dedicated recruiter, someone who can focus on recruitment, we'll have every open position on Indeed with a budget thrown at it to keep it at the top of the list to hopefully generate those candidates.
That's what I was thinking you were gonna say.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay?
A couple lines down from that, account 4880, other expense police physicals. So I know that this is the timing of this is difficult, but in '22, we spent 6,000. Last year, we spent 6,900. Half year this year, we spent 2,400, and we're still budgeting 12,000.
I don't know if historically we have always budgeted 12,000.
That would be my guess. I don't believe that was a full half year at that point either. I think we'd only processed through maybe May at that point, so it was 5 months. But that would be a line item that may be a little high, those two. The next two, I'm assuming you're looking at both of them back to back here?
Oh, expenses too.
Yep.
Yes, and then the 4880 4,000, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Civil service exams. So you think, Sam, both of those are a little high, so we may be able to,
I mean, potentially high. I mean, if there was a spot we wanted to make a change here, that would be the spot.
okay?
Would we be comfortable with going to 8,000 for each line?
I like the way you think.
And at least we're keeping close to 7,000 and a little bit of a cushion, but we're gaining 8,000 between that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's 4884,000 and 4882,000?
Yeah. Make a motion to amend that? Do we have to make a motion?
From 12 to 8 on both of those lines?
Correct.
Excuse me, the motion would just to be to decrease the total .4 expense by the total amount you're,
Okay.
by
Or
16,
No, no,
By
8,000.
8,000. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I make a motion to decrease the .4 column by 8,000?
Correct. Anybody second it?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Done.
That's 16,000 for the day.
Okay.
And you have the line details, Jen?
I'm sorry?
we
You
did,
have,
yep.
you know what we're,
Yep.
excellent.
Yep, sorry, I got you.
Okay.
Okay.
So-
Go ahead.
Sorry, just to revisit, the on-cost of $127,000, employee benefits versus the comp of 45. You said 3 people went from
Well-
single to,
Two family. I mean, that was when I looked at the budget, 'cause that number jumped out to me
okay.
of being such
Because,
a large
I mean, normally
increase.
you would expect if your comp's up 45, your benefits would be up 25.
Yeah, no,
So
that was,
that's 100,000?
Yeah, that was
divided by three, it's
definitely
like
related.
30,000 a pop, whoa.
well, the one, I believe there was not an insurance policy at all. It was an opt-out, and then the other
Opt out all the
two.
way in.
Because that was the one, I believe, that transferred from another
So
county
that would be
department.
approximately 25,000 for that individual.
That one, yep.
And then the other two,
I believe they went from single to family. I don't have my computer in front of me, but I know there were 2 that started families this year, and their packages increased substantially as well.
but if you subtract 27 from the 127, that's 100 divided by 3 is 33,000 a crack. And your biggest one is 20.
Well, there also is a very large increase to the retirement surcharge as well in the .8s here too, of almost 30,000, or 27,000 as well.
Yep, I was gonna point that out, where it says employee benefits, it isn't just medical, or just insurance costs.
So there's a retiree component.
Yeah, the health insurance went up like 113,000, but there's a retiree portion as well.
All right.
Okay. So that was what I have as page 3, that's the 1430
Yeah,
combined.
now it should be 1430
Benny?
Benny's, yeah.
Yep. So personal services, that's the decrease, 28,400, that's the allocation change, so we removed that .10 from benefits and added it to the HR side. Same thing with the decrease in contractual and the decrease that's showing for, employee benefits. Shared services.
guessing you're probably not charging as much because you have an allocation change.
Yeah, and it was more in line with the actuals that we've been seeing too, of 230, 255 last year, budgeted 270 this year. Oh, wait, that's the offset from the M fund is what we're looking at. If we're talking
that
about the
what it is?
yes, that's the
Yes.
offset out of the M fund. I apologize. I was looking at the.
Okay. So then page 5, which would be the summary just for the HR side, again, that comes down to, allocation change, contractual increases and then extra pay in personal services. And that was, yeah, that was all I had, I mean, highlighted to cover. I don't know if there's any questions on,
Any questions for Deb? Katie, you got a question?
It's not really a question for Debbie, but I just wanted to, to the questions on the .8 accounts, just so that there's an understanding how they're budgeted. So when we didn't really go over this in general, but, when we initiate our budget, all active employees are pulled into the budget, and whatever health insurance election that they have at the time is how we budget for the next year. So the system tells us exactly what to budget for if they opt out, family, single, family of 3. And then any vacant positions, we include, health insurance costs at, family of 2 level, because, we don't know what they're gonna come in at. So that's how we formulate, the budget for the health insurance on a, position basis. And then, again, the other components of the .8s are just the FICA, Medicare, and that's all driven as a percentage of whatever the wages are.
I have one question or not.
I'm sorry, we run out of time.
I'm hungry.
You're in the bonus round, go ahead.
You feel that, just back to the FTEs and the reallocations, throughout the year, we have had a recruitment problem throughout the county. And through various departments that I hear from, they have a tendency to point at HR. Okay? So you have this big shoulders that everyone's pointing, it's an HR problem, and we have a backlog. So, do you really feel that the recruiter, hopefully it will help that solution? And even with the recruiter, do you think you'll be able to fulfill the needs of the department? We can blame the state too for the tests, but is it our own department too lacking of some of those positions too, or?
And I think having a dedicated recruiter who's focusing on posting positions all the way through even taking over the orientation program, so that from a candidate's point of view, you have one point of contact from the day you apply to your first 2 days of employment. I think that person being involved in that entire process would streamline the process, make it more efficient. But I think someone not trying to focus on civil service exams and, the other non-recruiting tasks that our current, civil service folks have to also manage. you know, is it a gamble? Sure, but I think that if we have someone who can dedicate their focus just to recruitment efforts, we should see an increase in candidates. I think the more we can do to get county government, all of our open jobs, make sure that our job descriptions are flashy and, you know, they're gonna demand attention. I don't think that will hurt, applicant levels.
So we need a cheerleader.
Yes, yes. Someone who's gonna say, you know, Chautauqua County's a great place to work. Let me talk to you about why.
So when you hear, like, not to pick it on Indeed, but you hear these commercials all the time, you know, we find a quality applicant 98% of the time within 24 hours.
Yep. But I don't know that we are, as a county, fully using Indeed to its
Okay.
potential.
And I guess, what does that mean? We find a quality, I'm sure there's a quality person out there for every job that's open in America today. So that probably satisfies that 98%, whether they can connect you with them.
Right, right. And whether then
That's the big,
we as an employer can
that's the Grand
sell.
Canyon though, right? Getting
Right.
the person to the job.
Yes, yes. And then sell the county employment. You know, why do I wanna come and work for you?
Legislature in this county. is so
Right, I
fantastic.
know.
But there's probably a component too in the recruitment, you know, effort to just recruit people to want to take civil service exams.
Sure.
Because you can find somebody on Indeed, but then they might not want a provisional appointment, they might not understand what civil service even is, or, you know, all of those things. So it kinda, you know, goes even further back than just advertising on Indeed. And so that, you know, having somebody dedicated to those sorts of things, I think will be definitely in our
I
interest.
think making civil service exams seem very daunting to people, like it's,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, everyone, they're scared.
it's not
They're
trigonometry,
scared.
it's just,
I just have to
it's
answer the
just a
question.
test
Right.
about what you might be interested in
Mm-hmm,
doing, but I think it's a big step for people to take that test.
right.
Could we offer a no-fee
With a non-test
Saturday? Like, I mean, we can do whatever we want, but, okay.
$15 they spend it on coffee before they come and test.
But isn't the timeline the far more daunting thing to the candidate?
Yeah,
Right, yeah, I
Free
mean,
lottery
if we,
ticket.
if we could somehow get instant
Then right
results,
after
like
that,
any
first bullet.
other certification or, you know, online test. You know, I know for my HR certification, it was all online, it was virtual. I mean, I had to have a webcam turned on and active, and they had, you know, I was scanning the room and under tables and under my chair, and as soon as I hit submit on my last question, I knew whether or not I passed. It was instantaneous. So the push is for the state to, you know, get away from
Well, I
Scantron.
mean,
Even if we still wanna do, you know, the question and answer, you know, move it electronically, and we can figure it out where instant results.
In the private sector, I mean, if you apply for a job, you're either gonna get a no, or you're gonna be hired within 2-3 weeks
Right,
and be on board. And it sounds to me like if, in this situation, if you get liked, you're gonna be another 6 months to a year before you actually come on board,
unless we hire provisionally.
unless you hire a position.
Right, so we can hire provisionally, but again, that, it comes back to selling even provisional employment with the county.
Well, but, okay, but provisional employment is what you'd get in the private sector anyway.
Correct.
Right.
So on that basis, you're
Correct.
even, Stephen, okay. So what percent of people come on board on a provisional basis?
I'd have to, I can get you that answer.
Yeah, cause my instinct would be, sure, I'll come on provisionally, I'm
Yeah.
confident, what the heck? But,
if
Right.
they
Is that
say
not-
no, you probably don't want them. That's a judgment call, I see.
If they fail, they can just, be provisionally appointed to another position, there's always
Yeah.
something open.
mm,
We could have full-time provisionals.
well, I mean,
There's like-
Right.
There's, believe me, I've learned all the scenarios this past year of what can happen.
Well, you
It
know,
has happened.
schools hire full-time
it's really
subs that
been
are there all the
uh,
time. We just,
You know, and that was just a
Floaters.
my question, is, you know, as long as the office is working as efficiently as it can be with all the certain people and if there is enough people to do it. I don't wanna hold up to being our own, one of our own county departments is in filling the rest of the county departments, that's all.
Right.
That's the reason why I
Right.
asked, too.
Right.
So.
But if our interview process is good enough, how much more reliability on retention does the civil service exam give us anyway?
Well,
How good a
and-
predictor is it of success,
and-
above and beyond what you can do just interviewing them?
It's, well, it's
In-
kind of independent. It's that the provisional nature means if you can hire that, some applicants don't want to take the risk because if they don't pass and are reachable on the list, once the test is given a year from now, then they're out of a job. So
Right.
some people will just say, I don't wanna take that risk. Even people within the county don't take a promotional opportunity as a provisional appointment, cause they don't want the risk of not being able to stay in that job. Even though they might be doing well, sometimes people are really great employees and do a really great job, and for some reason, they don't do well on tests. Or so many more people will do that much better than them, and they're not reachable when
Okay.
the results come out. So there's a lot of,
Yeah, sometimes the exam in civil service sort of ties our hands, where if your top three are reachable and interested, and we don't want any of those, we can't get to the fourth one who may be sitting in the seat right now.
well, don't
Yes,
hire
the
the
concept of
recruiter on a
reachable was new to
provisional
me.
basis.
so when the tests are given, the people in the top three scores, so to speak, have to be considered first before anyone else on the list.
And that it's called a rule of three. So if you're looking at your top three and number one says, no, I'm not interested, you now shift and you're actually looking at 2, 3, and 4. You always have to look at three individuals. The
does
rule
it
of
just
three.
keep dropping down?
It just keeps shifting, yes.
So I do
yes.
have a shot at that job, that I scored 60.
Can you call number 3 first? Or is it in line? You know, then it would drop you down one. I just was curious how that worked.
How
It's
does
not
that
like you
work?
can, it's just like, you can actually have 10 people that are considered reachable in the top three. It just depends on how many like if you have 5 people that score 100, those 5 are considered your top three. But if you have a 100 and then a 95, and then you have 5 people at 90, you've got 7 people to consider.
Yeah, okay.
So it's just, it's a little hard to explain
If
quickly,
Yeah,
everybody
no,
gets,
that's
a-
right.
everybody gets a 65,
so you'd have
all
to,
100
so you'd
are-
have to go through
Yeah.
all of those 7 people if who you
70's
really are
passing.
hoping to get to is way
Is that
down
the-
here.
oh, 75.
And you have to get
70.
that many people to decline before you can move down the list. Which sometimes it
Sometimes
happens, you get
happens,
down
right.
and because people take the test for jobs at the schools, at, another town or municipality, so it's not, they're not just applying, the people who take the tests are not just doing it to take a county job.
And that's where the wait time is ridiculous. I mean, if you need a job and you're, most
Right.
people can't say, well, I could take one today or 6 months from now.
Right,
You're sort of knocking on the door because you want one today?
right,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, good. Anything else for Deb?
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
We didn't make you cry this year. All right,
Thank you.
and then a break for lunch. Till 1:30.
Well, a million years ago, I had this personal experience. For the State Department, took exam, you had to take an exam.
DMV. You going out to lunch?
Did well on the exam, so.